He said it so easily. So thoughtlessly. If you can't help every day, then you're just dead weight. I stood in the hallway, still holding my grandson. His cheek pressed against my collarbone, warm and sticky with sleep. My arms ached from the weight of him, not just his small, growing body, but the years I'd spent holding everything else together. Ryan didn't look at me. Just kicked off his shoes, one hitting the wall with a soft thud. He always did that, came in, undid things, assumed someone would fix it. I said nothing. Not because I agreed. But because I couldn't trust what might come out if I opened my mouth. Instead, I rocked the baby a little tighter, as if he might tether me to something softer. I nodded like I'd heard a passing comment about the weather. Like it didn't echo through my ribs, sharp and humiliating. Dead weight. Not tired. Not getting older. Not recovering from last winter's surgery. Just dead weight. And still, I cooked the dinner. Washed the little socks. Kissed scraped knees. Let them sleep while I stayed up with the baby's fever. But something flickered in me that night. Not pain. Not even sorrow. It was smaller than that. But brighter. A warning. After George passed, the house felt too big, and the silence inside it, too loud. At first, I thought I could weather it. I tried. I rearranged furniture. Bought new curtains. Even started sitting on his side of the bed, as if the view from that pillow might change the way grief settled into the walls. But nights dragged like rusted gates, and the stillness became unbearable. So when Ryan called to say Haley had come early and Jenna's mother wasn't well enough to help, I came without hesitation. Packed a suitcase, locked up the life I had known, and boarded a train with a pie and a purpose. It was love, plain and simple. Not desperation. Not fear. Love. I told myself, they need me. And being needed, well, it's almost like being loved. I sold the little house George and I bought in '87. The one with the peeling white shutters and the hummingbird feeder he used to refill every Saturday. I switched my healthcare to a local plan, one Jenna recommended. I had to leave my old doctor, the one who still remembered my name without a chart. I packed 36 years of married life into 10 boxes. Most of it ended up in their garage. Some in the attic. And the rest? Somewhere in the folds of my bathrobe, in the fading scent of my shampoo, in the hum of the baby monitor I kept on my nightstand long after they stopped needing it. At first, it worked. There were thank yous. Dinners where we laughed together. Jenna even made me tea sometimes, with a wedge of lemon the way I liked it. Ryan called me a lifesaver in front of his friends. They let me decorate Haley's nursery. I picked pale yellow, sunlight in color, even on gray days. And for a while, I believed I belonged. But slowly, quietly, things shifted. They started referring to me like I was part of the furniture. Let's check with Linda. She'll handle it. She's home anyway. I wasn't asked. I was assumed. When Jenna's yoga class overlapped with Ryan's work meeting, I was the given solution. When dinner was late or the laundry piled up, there was no apology, just expectation. Even the children picked up on it. Grandma will do it, they'd say, without looking up. One afternoon, Ryan called from work. No greeting, no how are you. Just. Pick up the kids at 2:30. Jenna forgot. The phone clicked off before I could respond. It wasn't cruelty. That would have been easier. It was dismissal. Like I was useful, but not important. Helpful, but not worth checking on. I can't remember the last time Ryan asked how I was sleeping. Whether my joints were aching. Whether I missed my own home. It had been almost 4 years. I didn't keep track at first. But that spring, I found the receipt from the pie I brought on the train. April 14th. For birthdays, for Christmases, 3 Thanksgivings where I peeled potatoes at dawn and fell asleep folding napkins. Not once did I sit at the head of the table. Not once did anyone ask if I was tired. Then, one rainy afternoon, my grandson, his nose buried in a tablet, looked up and asked, "Grandma, are you gonna live here forever?" I paused, blinking. And I realized, he didn't know I used to live anywhere else. That I had once been a girl in love with George on a bicycle in spring. That I used to have a garden, a choir group, neighbors who dropped by with pies. That I used to be someone else. I smiled gently, kissed his forehead, and said, "Not forever, sweetheart." But that night, I lay awake and wondered. When did I disappear? The next morning, I woke up before anyone else. The house was still, only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock in the hallway filled the silence. I sat at the kitchen table with my cup of tea, no milk, 2 sugars, just as I liked, and stared out the window. The sky was soft with the first colors of dawn. A single jaybird hopped across the fence line, its wings flaring with indifference. I used to believe silence was peace. But now I understood, it could be something else entirely. Erasure is quiet too. I opened the bottom drawer of the old sideboard and pulled out a folder. A simple navy blue thing, fraying at the edges. It had been tucked there for months, maybe years. I'd almost forgotten it was there. Inside were papers I hadn't dared touch. George's will. Our joint savings breakdown from before I sold the house. My mother's brooch appraisal. And my own will. The one I had written when I first moved in. Back then, I'd kept everything simple, Ryan as the sole beneficiary. Of course. He was my only son. Now, I held a red pen. And I began to cross his name out. Not in anger. But in clarity. He had already crossed me out long before. I didn't stop there. I picked up the phone and called Carol, a friend from church who'd recently been through something similar. "Carol," I said, my voice quiet, "who helped you rewrite your trust?" "Why?" she asked gently. And I told her. Not everything. Just enough. She gave me a name. A woman named Deborah, who specialized in elder estate protections. I made the appointment that same day. That afternoon, while Jenna was out with the kids and Ryan was still at work, I opened the old cedar box I kept on the top shelf of the linen closet. Inside was a smaller envelope. Thick. Sealed with wax. George's final savings. Not much to anyone else, less than 6 figures, but enough to matter. It had sat untouched since the move. I took it to the bank and opened a new account in my name. Only mine. Haley, my granddaughter, was added as a contingent beneficiary. But with a clause, she'd inherit the savings only if she chose to maintain contact with me. At least once a year. A visit. A letter. A voice that said, "I see you." That evening, I sat down in the soft armchair by the fireplace and looked around the living room. Family photos lined the walls, but none of me. Jenna had redecorated last fall. My framed picture with George at the old house had never made it back up. In its place hung a modern canvas, blue swirls on white. Beautiful, but meaningless. I stood, walked quietly to the hall closet, and began packing. One suitcase. The same one I had arrived with. It still smelled faintly of lavender. Still carried the fold of the train ride. I placed my robe inside, the one I'd worn through 2 winters of midnight feedings. I folded my wool cardigan. The knitted blue one with mismatched buttons, the one Haley once called cloud sweater. And last, I added George's photo. The small one. Just him, smiling on the porch, tea in hand. By the time Ryan got home, dinner was on the stove. But I had already booked a car for the next morning. I said nothing that night. Let the silence do its work. The next day, I slipped out before the sun rose. Left a note on the fridge. Simple words, written in the same hand that had once signed permission slips and birthday cards. Thank you for the time. I need something of my own now. No bitterness. No accusations. Just a truth. I took the train south to Medford. A quiet town. A place I remembered from when George and I visited the rose gardens there, years ago. I found a small apartment above a flower shop. One chair. One window. One soft rug. And peace. Real peace. Not the silence of vanishing. But the silence of presence. I bought a cactus. Named him Max. Took up chair yoga at the senior center. Opened a new bank account. Bought a kettle, just for me. Then I called to cancel Jenna's gym membership. She had forgotten it was still under my name. And I filed paperwork to block Ryan's attempt to declare me mentally unfit. Let him try to prove it. Let him explain why the woman who folded their towels and wiped their tears for 4 years had suddenly disappeared. And let the world hear what he never asked. Why? It took 10 days. 10 days of silence before the world they'd built without me began to show its cracks. The first letter arrived in a white envelope. No return address, but I recognized the careful script, tight, slanted, just slightly right of elegant. Jenna. I didn't open it right away. Let it sit on the little table by the door, beside Max the cactus and a pile of seed catalogs I'd started collecting. When I finally did, I read it slowly, line by line. Linda. This isn't how adults handle things. You left us in a tough spot. It was working. No mention of how I was. Not a single sentence asking if I was safe, or if I had enough to eat, or if I was lonely. Just the mild, patronizing frustration of someone inconvenienced. As if I were a part that had slipped loose from a well-oiled machine. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer I had labeled noise. 3 days later, Ryan appeared at my door. It was drizzling. He wore a coat he hadn't bothered to button, hair damp, eyes tired. He carried nothing. Not even an umbrella. I didn't invite him in. He shifted on the stoop, cleared his throat. I didn't mean it, he said. The words hovered there, uncertain, like a child offering a broken toy. I didn't mean what I said. I nodded. Slowly. He looked down at his shoes. You've always been there, he added, as if that explained anything. I can't manage this. I watched him carefully. Not with cruelty. Just clarity. The same way you might look at a painting you once thought was beautiful, and now realize was never quite finished. I know, I said. It was the only thing I could offer. He waited, shifting from foot to foot. Hoping, perhaps, that I would cry. That I would ask to come home. That I would soften into the version of me they remembered, the one who folded into guilt, who made excuses for their coldness, who mistook endurance for love. But I didn't. I held the doorframe like a lighthouse post, still and firm. Eventually, he left. Didn't say goodbye. The next morning, I found a grocery bag outside my door. Inside, eggs, milk, tea. My brand. No note. No name. Ryan again. I knew his gestures. Always more comfortable with silent offerings than with real apologies. I left the bag there until the sun turned the milk sour. Then I threw it out. That same week, Haley wrote me a letter. She had drawn a cat with wings and colored it pink. Underneath, in crooked 6-year-old scrawl, she wrote. Miss you, Grandma. Mommy says you're on a long trip. Are you flying too? Love, Haley. I cried then. Not because I was sad. Because she had found me. She had not forgotten. I wrote her back the same day. Dear Haley. I'm not flying, but I have a window that shows birds every morning. Tell me what you see from yours. Love always. Grandma. I included a packet of flower seeds. Marigolds. Hardy things. The kind that bloom even when the soil is tired. After that, Saturdays became ours. She visited once a week, her visits approved by Jenna, I assume, though never escorted. She came with stories. We baked cookies in silly shapes, dragons, elephants, a moon that looked more like a potato. We planted the seeds. I taught her to knit. She taught me how to draw eyes with shine spots. We didn't talk much about her parents. But once, while rolling dough, she asked, "Why did you leave?" I paused. Then said gently, "Because sometimes people forget how to be kind. And I needed to remember who I was." She nodded, serious and small. "I'm glad you remembered." So was I. Ryan wrote again. His tone softer this time. Less clipped. He included a story about the dog they almost adopted, a recipe Jenna wanted to try, an update on Haley's reading level. I didn't respond. But I kept the letters. Not as olive branches. As records. Proof that he was still reaching, if only with fingertips. But I had already stepped back. Not in punishment. In peace. In choosing myself. For the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and saw someone I recognized. Not the woman they wanted. Not the fixture in their hallway. But a woman with thoughts, with softness, with spine. A woman who had given everything, once. And who had now chosen, instead, to give carefully. Quietly. And mostly, to herself. I never went back. There were moments, yes. Quiet ones. When I stood by the window with my tea and thought I heard a child's laughter that sounded like Haley's. When I wondered if Jenna ever taught her to tie her shoes the way I used to, 2 loops, twist and tuck. But I didn't go back. Not for birthdays. Not for holidays. Not even when Ryan wrote again in December, saying, "It's not the same without you." Of course it wasn't. Things change when the ghost leaves the room. I stayed in Medford. The apartment was small, but it had good bones, thick windows, floors that creaked in a comforting way. I bought a blue kettle. It whistled. I liked that. I joined a library club for women over 50. We didn't always read the book. But we always showed up. That mattered more. On Tuesdays, I walked to the corner cafe for soup and cornbread. They knew me by name. On Wednesdays, I visited the rose garden. George would have liked that. He always said flowers reminded him of forgiveness, fragile, but persistent. On Fridays, I took the bus to the open-air market and bought exactly 1 peach, if they were ripe. And Saturdays belonged to Haley. She came like clockwork. Always a little taller, always with a new drawing tucked in her bag. She told me about school, about her teacher who smelled like lilacs, about her cat who stole socks, about how Jenna still burned toast. Sometimes she asked questions. "Do you miss Daddy?" "Yes," I'd say. "Do you hate Mommy?" "No." Then she would nod, accepting that love and pain could live in the same sentence. Children know more than we think. One afternoon, she helped me hang curtains. A quiet task. She stood on a chair and handed me the clips one by one. "Grandma," she said, "are you happy here?" I looked around. At Max the cactus, still stubbornly alive. At the shelf of seed packets. At the teacup with a crack I liked. Yes, I said. Because I was. For the first time in years, no one was waiting for me to finish the laundry before speaking. No one sighed when I sat down. No one used my presence like a switch. I wasn't necessary. I was wanted. There's a difference. A large one. In April, I turned 68. No big party. No fuss. Just a lemon tart from the bakery downstairs, a single candle, and Haley humming off-key as she pushed it toward me. You get a wish, she said. I closed my eyes. And I didn't wish for anything. Not because I had everything. But because I had enough. That was something no one had taught me, not even George. It was something I had to learn by losing everything else first. One night, I sat with my feet tucked under me, reading a book with the window cracked open. Outside, the wind rustled the trees gently, and someone in the next apartment was playing a cello. I turned the last page. The story ended with the heroine planting a tree where a house had burned down. I closed the book and smiled. Not all endings are about revenge. Some are about rebuilding. Some are about choosing peace over apology. And some are just about the quiet knowledge that you are no longer waiting for someone to see you, because you see yourself. I no longer asked for a seat at their table. I built my own. Small. Wooden. Set for one, sometimes two, always enough. There was no placard with my name. Just a mug that said, "You survived everything so far. You'll survive this too." And I had. I did. I do. It was a Wednesday when the letter arrived, thick envelope, gold-edged, her name written in Haley's careful, wobbly cursive. Inside, a photograph. Haley, in a graduation cap made of construction paper, holding up a certificate with glitter-glued edges. In the corner, written in marker, I learned how to read because Grandma taught me about stories. And beneath it, a short note. I told my class about the cookie shapes and the plant with a silly name and how your apartment smells like lemon tea and old books. They asked if you were my real grandma or just a pretend one. I said, she's the realest person I know. Linda pressed the photo to her chest. Her throat clenched, not with pain, but something fuller, richer. That night, she lit the small candle she kept on the window ledge. No occasion. No ceremony. Just the soft flame and her reflection beside it, lined, weathered, unbroken. She remembered the moment George proposed. The first time Ryan called her Mama. The day Haley asked why clouds looked sad before it rained. And she remembered the hallway where Ryan once called her dead weight. She smiled. She was not dead. Not heavy. Not forgotten. She was rooted. Present. Seen. That weekend, she stood in the community garden, hands deep in the dirt, planting marigolds and tomatoes with a group of women whose stories mirrored hers in quiet, aching ways. And when a child walked past and asked, "Whose grandma are you?" she laughed. All the ones who need one. Because in choosing herself, she had become more. Not just remembered. But remembering. Of who she was. Of who she still could be.